All right. We had some people complaining that you couldn't really hear the sound, that it wasn't really, but we'll get it when it goes on YouTube. You'll be able to hear it just fine.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah,
so,
if you look up Belvedere, our stuff's all over the place up there. So, but
yeah,
a little quiet. That's okay.
yeah. You look at Belvedere Band, and you guys all kind of music videos. Now, why did you decide to, or are you going to also do a music video for this song, or are you just going to keep it a lyric video?
Well, we put out 4 singles already for the record the last couple of months, and we have done videos for sure in the past, but it's kind of tough because we're in Calgary and our bass player's in Toronto, and we're in various stages of not being able to get together. So we're hoping that maybe over the summer we can do something for one of the songs.
Being a band so long, hey, what's up, Raphael? How are you?
Hey.
I'm trying to find it. There it is. Being a band for so long, have you had a bunch of different band members come in and out, or has the band has the core stayed the same, or is it completely changed up?
I'm the only original member from ¡95.
Oh,
so
wow.
We've definitely had a few drummers over the years, and then more recently, just before about 2 years ago, the guitar player and bass player that had been in the band since '97 split. Everybody kind of decided they wanted to stop touring, and so had a little conversation with everybody who wanted to go on, and then we took basically the year to get 2 new guys kind of brought up to speed just in time to tour, and then not tour and write a record.
Yeah, you guys are planning on touring again though soon, right?
Yeah, we're hoping to go back to Europe here. We've got 3 Europe tours, some Canada stuff, and maybe some US stuff to make up here. As we had some stuff in Mexico that fell through as well. So we're kind of itching to, when things are able to make a lot of this up.
Okay, and you being the one, and you book most of the band's shows, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So take us through the process of how you set up tours. Like if you're going to go to Europe, how do you know? Like do you have like a set map that you try to follow, and you just call the venues up and set up your own tours that way? How does that work?
I mean, I've got a pretty good book of people that I go to that are promoters, and generally now we've done this a lot. So you kind of look for the festivals to sort of get things rolling, and then you just kind of route the tour from there. We try to get to as many countries as we can. Definitely in the last 10 years, we haven't been able to, play more than 4 or 5 shows at a time. So it's usually fly over for a festival, do a couple of club shows and go home. Where this time we're actually able to go over and do a month. So, we can play, pretty much everywhere in the UK, Western Europe, maybe as far, maybe into Eastern Europe, depending on how much time we have. But yeah, just kind of route it and try to, Europe's nice in that if you do it right, you can usually only have to drive 2 or 3 hours versus a Canadian tour where every major city is 8 to 10 hours apart. So it all feels awesome going over there because I don't have to spend my entire day in a van.
Based on your experience, would you recommend to new bands to get signed, or do you think that they should stay independent?
I think every band in every genre, it really depends. I've been on labels that are booked, that are distributed by majors, and I've been down, I had my own label, which had limited distribution in the 90s, and every situation sort of is different for every band. It kind of depends on where you are, what you're willing to give up to that label, or if the opportunity is not there. I mean, there's not really as many labels as there used to be, and given the internet, if people are savvy enough and they have their distribution channel set up, then maybe you don't need a label. Or maybe you're a new band that has no idea what to do, but you're a really good band, and maybe you have somebody that can, help bridge that gap to the labels, and maybe you have a good situation there, then maybe it makes sense. But, more and more I hear, bands saying, fuck, I wish I hadn't signed that thing 4 years ago or, 3 albums ago. And, we changed our name or we split up because there was no point. We were never going to make any money. We were always going to get hosed everywhere we went. And that's never a good place to be. So that was one of the reasons why I started a management and booking companies, because I've been able to lead my bands, away from that stuff.
Awesome.
I think you brought up a good point. I think that, and I'm going to answer that question from someone who's never been signed to a record label, right? Mm-hmm. I think that there's an excitement when you're a new band, especially if you're young, on getting signed to a record label. And I think the experience probably helps you understand how to do things yourself without a record label being involved. Like being signed to a label might show you how they're doing it, and then as you get older, you can figure out your own way to do it. So I would assume that the experience is pretty valuable, especially if you're young.
Yeah, I mean, a record label. The thing is I think a lot of people think a record label is the be all and end all, and you've got, the labels of one part of the puzzle. Sometimes a booking agent is more important. A good booking agent is more important than a label. And a manager is kind of a funny thing because everybody, sometimes there's real managers and then there's your buddy who thinks he's a manager, and that's a very different thing. And that sometimes creates a lot of friction with me, sometimes with my bands. And, it's some people that kind of the fifth or sixth member that maybe shouldn't be in the mix. So, but then sometimes you've got that manager that has the connections to the label and the tours and everything. And they go, look, you don't even need a label. Just go on tour with this band. And, they'll get you in front of the right audience. And, again, it's just how much do you want to take control of and how much do you want to give away? But, one size doesn't fit all.
I think labels are also good if you don't have the money to put money into your own stuff. But to be honest, if you're in a band of 4 or 5 or even 3, if you can put your money together and do your own promotions and find a good booking agent, like you said, to get you out there for the shows, I think that maybe a label is not as important. But if you need the money and you don't have money to pump into an album, then a label is probably good because I think they probably front, or they used to anyways. I don't know if it's the same as it is now, like it was then. But don't labels, isn't that kind of the job to help pump money into the album or for the recording?
But that's changed a lot too as album sales decrease over decades. It's that money's not there either. And so I think a lot of bands kind of get up to the plate and then they go, oh, I thought you were going to pay for all this. We're like, well, you have no history. So, or record sales. So how can we give you $20,000 to go record? If you haven't proved your worth yet. And then now so then it's like, do you want a record deal or do you want a licensing deal? And those are different things, right? So.
Right. Okay. Now I got just a couple more questions for you, and then I'll give the floor to Ava if she wants to ask some final questions. But you said 20 bands right now, and you're also getting ready to do a tour. How complicated is that while you're on tour? I see you kind of smiling already. How complicated is that to be able to book bands while you're doing a European tour?
Well, I mean, a lot of this last year has been kind of a real pain in the ass because all the bands I booked almost 300 shows for 20 bands and leading up to it, I had that whole year leading up to it, right? And then everything just kind of got flushed down the toilet. So that is one of concern now is that as I'm gearing up to go away for 100 shows, how, it's not all at once, but how can I set everything else back into place? So luckily I'm a multitasker and I'll be able to figure it out. And most of the bands are not full-time touring bands. They'll go to Europe for 2 weeks or something like that. And all I'm doing is copying and pasting with the promoters. It's one email, everybody rebook the venues, you're good to go. And sometimes it's, you have to start from scratch. So, I have an intern in Toronto. I have another one in the Netherlands. And those guys are really helpful with regional booking. And, just keep grinding away until we get things back to normal.
Okay, and then one last question is: do you ever book the bands that you're the booking agent for? Do you ever book them on tours with your band, Belvedere?
Yeah, that's actually the ideal.
Okay. So
then I don't have to do anything. I just book my shows, and then I'm like, you guys can open. Cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ava, you got anything?
Who or what inspires your music?
I feel like my family's a big inspiration. I have a 5-year-old son, and he's made me think a lot about the world outside of my own selfish things. And I think lyrically, it's made me think a little bit about the grander scheme of things and what's next for his generation, whether it's politics or the environment or whatever. It's made me it's made me be a little more hyper focused, and it's also so it's inspired me for sure. And the guys that I play in the band with are very inspirational people and good players and super fun and positive, and that's a big thing. But also the bands that I work with and the promoters that I work with are very everybody really props each other up. It's a good scene. People like yourselves here that are exposing bands to your audience, I mean, that's wonderful. And everyone's just like really positive. You know, there's a lot of bad things going on in the world right now, but this love of music and the scene around it is inspiring in itself.
That's awesome, man. So it's safe to say that Fred Durst is not your inspiration.
I don't know him, and I don't have anything against him, but yeah, Nookie didn't have much play in the problem. That's for sure. No offense to him.
You're not gonna do a cover of that song.
When you're touring outside of Canada, when you're touring like say in Europe, do you have like a stripped down version of all your gear and your equipment? Like, how is it logistically complex, or do you rent stuff over there?
I have backline companies in most parts of the world that we hit up. So most of the time the bands will bring a small amount of merch because you always have to think about borders and things like that. Usually your guitars and your breakables, if you're a drummer, cymbals, you know, kick pedal, hi-hat, snare drum. And then most of the backline we can rent. In Europe particular, there's a really good network of companies, and it's fairly inexpensive. You can rent a backline for anywhere from 50 to 100 euros a day. And then, you know, as well as the backline, you have all the vans and everything, and drivers if you need, and so.
That's awesome. You have any more questions, Raphael? I forgot to even ask you. You guys are in the band. You probably have better questions than I do. Is there anything else you want to ask him? Being from Europe, you're from Europe. Do you have any other questions you want to ask him before we get off?
Well, I mean, probably. You know, I was not here at the beginning, so but a bit. I heard something fascinating that you've been in this band since '95.
Yep, that's right.
So how do you hold this together? It's and you said you've been the only member that stayed. So I assume there's been a lot. I mean, you know, we all know that there's a bit of drama in bands here sometimes. You know, like we have drama all the time.
Well, some of these guys have been here for 20 years. You know, so like I say, two of the guys that have been around since '97. You know, just recently left. So, you know, there has been some members that have come and gone, and, you know, it especially for a band like us that, you know, we're still grinding away and playing, you know, small to mid-sized venues. You either want to do it or you don't. And sometimes people hit parts of their life where, you know, things like family and stuff are more important to them. I'm in a good spot where my wife comes to Japan and South America and all this stuff and sells T-shirts. You know, she has her day job by day, and she's very supportive. My kid has seen us play, you know, at a festival in Belgium. And, you know, as time goes on, I want to be able to bring him to more of that stuff. I'd love for him to see South America and Japan and places like that. So it is tough to hold together, but we're fortunate enough that we have a good fan base that's really dedicated, and that makes it easy. You know, like there's people, It's not massive. Sometimes we get to do these big tours and festivals. Most of the time we sort of play in front of 100 to 400 people on our own. And that is magical because we can do that in most places of the world. I can't think of any other reason to there's nothing else I'd rather do than this. That's amazing to me that, you know, a bunch of kids from Calgary could do that.
Well, what's, you know, I look at